本日は人事院主催の
Thank you for joining this online lecture hosted by the National Personnel Authority. So this is Maeda, Director of International Affairs Division. And before opening the session, I'd like to give a brief introduction. This lecture will be delivered with simultaneous interpretation. Participants via Zoom can use the Zoom translation button to switch the language. If you are using the streaming site, you can use the links at the bottom of the streaming site. The materials for the presentation are available both in English and Japanese, and also the basic information on Singapore's civil service is also available in Japanese. You can download from the link via Zoom and from the link on the website. Today's topic is tech talent attraction, development, and retention in Singapore. Singapore is a leading e-government country and is said to have one of the world's highest levels of national labor productivity. In 2016, a government agency called Government Technology Agency, in short, GovTech, was established to lead the digitalization of government and providing a variety of services on a common platform for government agencies. We are pleased to have Mr. Desmond Teo from GovTech in Singapore. Mr. Teo is joining us from Singapore. Mr. Teo has worked in the field of human resources and career development in both the public and private sector, National University, and Kaplan, Singapore. And currently, he is in charge of the early identification of digital talent and career development support for digital talent at GovTech, which is in charge of DX for the Singapore government. Today's lecture is scheduled to last approximately 1 hour until 4 p.m. Following the lecture, we are going to have a Q&A session. And you can provide and submit the questions via Zoom's QA function. We will be happy to answer your questions as well as those submitted during the registration. Now, we would like to invite Mr. Teo. The floor is yours.
Give me a moment. Let me just make sure my screen is up. Just want to check, can everyone hear me? Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon. Thank you so much to the National Personnel Authority, NPA, invited me to have this sharing with all of you. I'm really honored and for you to be able to take time and listen to what I have to share with you. And I really look forward to some questions that you may have later on, right? So a quick introduction about myself. I think just now was also already introduced by our friend. My name is Desmond. I'm the Assistant Director from the Smart Nation Digital and Government Group. Again, I would like to thank you so much for having me in this webinar, and I'm humbled to share with you how the Singapore government has been attracting and developing tech talent. So before I share the tech talent attraction and development strategies and approaches, please do allow me to first share a little bit more about who we are. So we are the Smart Nation and Digital Government Group, SNDGG in short, sitting within the Prime Minister office, as you can see the house on the top. So SNDGG is formed by the Smart Nation and Digital Government Office. So that is an office that looks after the tech policies within the government, as well as GovTech as our implementation agency. So these two entities come together, they form the Smart Nation Digital Government Group, SNDGG. So since SNDGG was formed in May 2017, SNDGG's formulation has really helped to consolidate and further advance our Smart Nation ambition, and also enable our government to be more integrated and responsive in our strategy. This is quite important because citizens' needs does change over time. And we do need to take a very data-centric approach so that we can adapt to the needs of our citizens. So because of that, our key responsibilities include some of these I'm going to tell you. The first is we aim to leverage on digital and smart technologies to improve the lives of our citizens. So that's first. Second, we will want to develop digital enablers and platforms for Smart Nation. In order for Smart Nation to evolve, we need those platforms and enablers, in other words. And also not forgetting to drive digital transformation for the whole of government, public service. So this is to strengthen the government info communication technology infrastructure, which will definitely in turn improve the public service offering and delivery that we have for our citizens. So for SNDGG to succeed, of course, we need good support from the larger government, which is why when you look at the faces we have on screen, these are our ministers. So we are guided by an inter-ministerial committee. So a few ministers come together to guide us along in how we advance over the years since 2017. And SNDGG, this committee is being guided and chaired by our senior minister, Teo Chi Hian. So next, I'd like to talk about what SNDGG is set up to do. Just now was how we came about. Now let's talk about what are we set up to do. Our vision has been very clear, and that is to transform Singapore into a smart nation so that people are empowered to live meaningful and fulfilling lives. That's what we all hope for and wish for. And to achieve this vision, our mission is to lead the development of a smart nation by working with organizations across both the public and private sector. Specifically, when we talk about smart nation is quite a buzzword and quite a big term, right? So what do we mean by smart nation? We focus on 3 pillars as shown on the screen in front of you. So they are first, the digital government, second, the digital economy, and last but not least, digital society to be inclusive. So let me go through one at a time. Let's talk about first digital government. This is about building public service agencies that are digital at the core. You need all the transformations to start from within and not from outside. So we have to start at the core. At the same time, the other layer is to serve with a heart. So there are 2 layers. At the core is digital. The other layer is to serve with the heart. So to achieve that, we want to provide integrated and seamless government services, as well as using greater intelligence for more efficient policy making and also to help our operations delivering the services to citizens. So that is to be a digital government, the first pillar. Second will be digital economy. This is so important, right? In this day and age. This digital economy is to build a vibrant economy, essentially, that remains attractive to foreign investment wanting to come to Singapore. This is definitely good news for us because it will bring about good opportunities for Singapore citizens. And we want to, at the same time, digitalize industries. We can't forget the industries are the ones who bring in all the opportunities. So we want to help businesses to level up as well through digitalization. And that will also create more jobs and opportunities for our citizens. In all, a good and capable digital economy will bring about a lot of opportunities for everyone in Singapore. So that's the second pillar. Last but not least, we need to be inclusive. So we want to empower Singapore to maximize the opportunities of a digital society, because a digital society is one where citizens have easy access to technology and embrace it. Okay, we cannot leave people behind. So we need to be inclusive and utilize technology confidently at different age group. And this will help us connect with the world around us. So that's the third pillar, digital society. Next, this, what you see on screen, is an illustration of our digital blueprint since the year 2018. So for the purpose of this sharing today, I will just focus on the last item you see on screen, the one in red color. That is how the Singapore government continually attract tech talent, upskill public officers, as well as to adapt to new challenges and workflows. This talent agenda, as you can see in the broader picture, is very important, which is why we put it inside the blueprint even. So talent is not something we will not think about. We will need to talk about it constantly. So from here, please allow me to now talk about tech workforce shortage. In other words, what are the challenges that we face? We need to talk about where are the challenges, what's the gap, before later on, I will go into what are some of the talent strategies that we have put in place. All in all, I would like to cluster all the challenges into these three different pillars, or three types of challenges. You can see them that way too. So the first challenge is quantity. Second is specific tech skills that we always need. The third will be quality. In terms of quantity, if you see from the left, there is a constant lack of tech talent joining the public service. And it is very important if we are unable to attract enough skilled workforce, the number of people coming into the government to do our Smart Nation work, it is very difficult for what I just said before, having the Smart Nation able to propel forward. So quantity, the number of tech talent is a challenge for us. Second, there is a constant, strong need to be more competent, correct? So we need more competency in in-demand areas, such as data analytics, agile software development, and many, many more. So the last is quality, right? We talk about quantity, we talk about a need for more competent workforce. We also need to talk about quality. So it has been, and I believe it will continue to be a challenge to attract and retain the top talent. These are the people that we hope they can become future leaders, leading the government space of tech. So with the challenges, the three types of challenges I shared, and having all these in mind, we developed several talent strategies to attract, to develop, as well as to retain tech talent in the Singapore government. For the purpose of this illustration, I would like to use these four quadrants that you see on screen. And let's start from the top left, the one in orange. So that is the quadrant on talent outreach and cultivation. Cultivation means we build a pipeline. So there are four main initiatives that we have tried, and I'm very happy to share that they work quite well for us. So we partner public agencies, that means other government organizations, to come together and brand together as one digital government. So that's quite important. And this campaign that we have undergone is called talent hunting as a pack. As a pack means you come together. So this campaign has helped us to kickstart the momentum in driving subsequent tech branding campaigns for the government. So we have a good start. From there, we carry on. Concurrently, we have also increased our social media presence across platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, TikTok, and YouTube. I believe when there are more platforms, we will also give it a try. These are quite important because we need to be closer to the people, to the talent. So we need to see where they are spending more time, and that's where we want to brand ourselves on those platforms. So increasing the social media presence is a very important step to go. Besides the social media platforms, we have also deepened our relationship with professors across Singapore universities. And this is to partner with the professors to reach out to those computing students who will be able to help us in this Smart Nation journey. Last but not least, we have also built up a digital tech talent team. It's a team that helps to drive overseas cultivation, and that will help us to attract the senior tech talent for a career with the Singapore government. So that's for talent outreach and cultivation. I want to move to the right, the gray color quadrant. So this is where we significantly ramp up our effort in talent attraction and green harvesting. Green harvesting means to attract the students, the fresh graduates. That's called green harvesting. We recognize that there are some pay differences. I think you may have heard from some of your peers or friends around the world. Different tech domain pays slightly differently. So it's quite difficult for us to just say that we pay the same for all tech domains. Right. So because of that, we have started compensating our tech workforce within the government with pay differentials according to the market. So it has to be attractive enough that it is pegged to what they can expect, average to what the market is offering. We do not overpay the market because that's not what public service is about. So beside paying competitively, we continue to award Smart Nation scholarships. So these scholarships will help us to reach out to fund the school fees of all-rounded and high-performing students, hoping that these will join us as our talent pool. So in addition, we have also sharpened all our young talent programs, and this is aimed to provide students with a comprehensive internship as well as develop opportunities for them. It's very important because if young people are able to feel that they are growing with us, they will likelihood join us because they know that we are quite serious about developing them. Let me move on to the next quadrant, the one in yellow below. I'll now talk about talent and leadership development. Very important. This is to ensure that we have a healthy pipeline of tech leaders taking on critical technology roles in the government. So on this, we have defined differentiated career pathways. Later on in subsequent slides, I will give you more details and examples. So these differentiated career pathways for tech talent is what we hope that they can be attracted to. And in order for them to learn and grow into the career pathways, we have also sharpened all our learning and development initiatives to be guided based on the 70-20-10 rule or approaches. Some of you who are in the learning and development space would have heard this for quite some time. So the 70-20-10 is an approach that we use to guide us along for all development initiatives. Public officers also are groomed through a very structured competency-based development matrix, which again, later on, I will go into it in subsequent slides. So on top of what I said, we have also established various routes of advancement for APEC's very important critical tech positions. Last but not least, let me move on to the last quadrant in blue. Let's talk about talent retention and succession planning in the last quadrant. This is very important, a quadrant, because we need everyone to do this together. So this is where we get the team managers, at different divisions. We get the team managers to come together, advocate and encourage them constantly to have regular conversation, career conversation with their team members. So they have to engage their team through career conversation where they talk about what will you want to do next year, what you want to do in 3 years' time, what kind of tech domains you want to learn. So we need to engage in career conversation. We also drive the culture and practice for staff to be rewarded based on performance. So that's another thing that is quite linked to the previous point I make. We need to send a signal, very clear signal to all our public service officers that we are paying for performance. That is where they will also level up to perform and learn. And we have put in place structured biennial succession planning exercise. This is to help us to make sure that we keep our eye to make sure that certain tech talent, they are really good. Let's continue to groom them so that they can take on leadership position as succession planning goes. So to summarize, it's a very busy slide here. To summarize, this 4 quadrant illustrates the key strategies that the Singapore government undertook to attract, to develop, and also to retain tech talent. So next, after this slide, allow me to deeper dive into some examples on various career pathways and learning development opportunities that we have already put in place. So let me get your focus on the top part of the slide. You will see three different pillars again. So first, I would like to share that we have three career pathways to develop tech leaders with varying skills, expertise across tech domains. Tech domain means it can be software engineering, cybersecurity, data analytics, and so forth. So they have various tech domains. It can also be operations. It can also be policy-making skills and experience. So these three career pathways is catered for all this very varied skill set of people. So starting from the left of the screen, we have the tech specialist track. So this is the career pathway for staff who would like to be groomed into becoming a deep tech specialist, building cutting-edge technology and also digital products. Engineers like to look at how they can build things and make sure that it values add to people. So that is for this pool of engineers. And they will be groomed into becoming a distinguished engineer at the end, or a principal engineer in some of the tech agencies in the Singapore government. So the next one in the middle, this is the tech leadership track. So this is the career pathway for staff who have strong leadership abilities, but also with very good foundation in a very specific tech domain. So it can be a data scientist, but has a very, very strong leadership ability. So they will be groomed into becoming engineering leaders, heading all those engineering teams and very large scale operations. So they can become chief technology officers or senior directors in a specific tech agency. Last but not least, on the right, that is the tech management track. So this career pathway is for staff with very strong management experience and also policy and governance. So they need to have a very broad base. So unlike the one in the middle, the one on the right, the management track, this is for those leaders who have very broad-based foundation on tech domains. So they know quite a bit of everything, but may not be very deep into becoming a chief data scientist. So they will help to lead the ministries and the government organization to be in leadership roles like chief executive officers. So in addition to the three career pathways you see on top, from the bottom and below, I just want to point out that we also have put in place some talent schemes and programs across, they cut across the three career pathways for staff to be developed on some common leadership skill set and know-how. So one key example is the Public Service Leadership Program. So this is a program to groom high potential staff in leading teams in the future. Okay, so I come to this slide. As you can see, there are a 70-20-10. This applies to the 70-20-10 rule. So this slide explains the learning and development principle that we adopted based on the 70-20-10 approach. And it is to provide a systematic way, not just for HR people like myself, but also for our staff, our public officers, to understand there's a systematic way for them to develop themselves. So the 70% of all the learnings and the experience will focus on experiential learning. What do I mean by experiential learning? Okay, so this will include enhanced career development forum, where officers come together, exchange ideas, and they grow together. Cross-agency project is another. We also allow public officers to be attached to private companies in the private sector through this program called the Digital Tech Talent Attachment Program, DTAP in short. In the near future, actually, we do have some plans to even drive hackathons and competition with the private sector. The whole idea of this collaboration with private sector is because a lot of public officers may be looking out to look at, hey, I have done quite a bit in public service. Can I also learn something from the private companies? So we allow that. But at the same time, we will plan with them for them to return back to public service. The next is for the next 20% of the learning experience, we focus very much on what we call the relational learning. This is where public officers are invited to be engaged with senior management teams. So senior management staff will then have direct engagement with the people so that they feel engaged and aligned with them. So that also will include attending tech events and also to receive career mentoring. The last 10%, as you can see, is a small proportion. And this is something very familiar to everyone. That will focus on the formal learning. So the 10% includes the technical certification. It can be a AWS solution architect certification that is relevant to the job, or it can be any other form of training and milestone program that the officer needs to go through. In terms of skills upgrading for our public officers, we roll out the use of competency-based development to identify skill gaps and support them in upskilling their capabilities. So as you can see from the screen, this competency approach cuts across at different levels. So it cuts across 128 technical functions, 11 job functions, and 42 job roles. My last slide that I want to talk about is this. It's because we are very thankful that we have tried enough, we also failed enough to learn. So now that because we have a structured career pathway, we have a robust learning and development approach as well as competency-based metrics, we can now draw out the route of advancement for high-performing officers to grow into those pinnacle critical tech leadership positions. I've come to the end of my presentation. I hope that I have helped everyone to learn a little bit more and for us to share how the Singapore government has tried our best to attract, develop, and retain talents. I'm very happy to take any question you may have. Thank you very much. I will unshare my screen now.
ありがとうございました。シンガポール
Thank
政府によ
you so much. In Singapore, we are able to learn so much from the tech talent attraction and development and retention. So we have received so many questions, therefore we would like to move on to Q&A. So first of all, in your presentation, you focus on hiring of external personnel, but that means public service is based on lump sum hiring and long-term employment. And based on that, the participants is also interested in how to digitalize the human resources within the public sector. My question is, in Singapore, do you ever train your internal human resources for digitalization? What kind of measures? Do you provide any kind of reskilling and training programs to them?
Thank you very much for the question. I want to emphasize one thing that the Singapore government will never lose track. First, the principle that we adopt for training people has always been growing our own timber. Growing our own timber means you have a small plant in your backyard, you grow that plant before you look at other plants outside of your house. So we definitely would have we have already put in to look at first what our current officers, the current employees of the Singapore government, what are their skill sets? So we do assessment. And then from there, we customize and we build training programs for them. At the same time, it is also very important that we also allow good ideas and experience from outside of the government in the private sector to join the government so that you have a mix of people who have many years of good government working experience in the government. At the same time, they can exchange ideas with those new joiners from the industry. So that will help to propel the overall skill set as well as the standard of our workforce. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. So next question is also about within the public services. Within the public services and amongst the employees, there should be some digital divides, we believe. And are you taking any initiatives to eliminate the digital divide amongst the public servants?
If I'm not wrong, the question is asking about how do we make sure that people who are not as digitally savvy can work well with people who are highly digital. Okay. So this is quite important, a point just now I made in my presentation, the principle of not leaving anyone behind. The same principle that we expect ourselves to deliver for the citizens, not leaving anyone behind, we have to do the same within public service. What do I mean? Maybe I set some examples. So first, when it comes to communication tools, example, this is Zoom, right? So in the Singapore government, we actually advocate the use of Microsoft Teams. And when we roll out Microsoft Teams, not everyone knows how to use it. Okay, so how we do it is we roll out progressively from some agency to other agencies. In between, we learn and get feedback from especially those who are not savvy. We listen, understand what they need, and we put in some workshop for them to come on board and learn. So this will take some time. We cannot rush into it, but it is very important that our intention was being communicated to everyone at the same time. We tell everyone that this will need some time. Some people may need more time, but we need to be patient. But ultimately, we need to all scale up to be at the same level to communicate. So this is one example that I'm citing to make sure that communication devices and all that platforms are online. There are other areas like data analytics, where now we look at different sets of data. It can be the operation data, it can be facility data, it can be HR data. Some officers may not be so well versed in knowing data. So that is where a lot of senior leaders come together and think that, hey, knowing how to use basic data is quite important. We have to know how to use Excel spreadsheet, very important, but why don't we go a little bit further? How do we get insights from the Excel spreadsheet? So this is where we work with our universities, we work with our schools, training institution to provide those customized training after we know the needs, and then we advocate them to go for those training so that everyone at least have a very common foundation to move forward.
Thank you very much. Next question. So talking about the tech talents, so you said that you collaborate with the private sector and also the public sector. However, I think even among the ministries, I think there could be some competition among the ministries to recruit skilled tech talents. And are you able to kind of balance those tech talents amongst the ministries?
Which is why we have created the campaign called Tech Talent as a Pack, or Hunting Talent as a Pack. So we all know that there will be some competition among the ministries and government bodies because everyone is thinking about the same thing, which is I need the talent. So once you have that mindset individually, we will just go a different direction just to get the talent, and it become a competition. We are well aware of that. But we also want everyone to have some unique identity, so we don't stop them. But at the same time, we come from another layer, an overarching layer, to tell them that at certain time, we should come together. And then we go with one digital government. And because of that, in some of the career fairs that I personally have seen is that it is a very strong brand. Think about this from the job seeker perspective, not from us. From job seeker perspective, they do not recognize this is this agency, that is that agency. They actually recognize this is public service. So it is just different work in public service. So we need to come together and share that. So how do we get all of them to buy in? I think that's the next question. Why would they even be willing to collaborate, right? This is where we need to first understand what are some of the challenges that these ministries and agencies face. The challenge in terms of attraction, in terms of their employer branding. So we need to understand what are some of the challenges they face and who are their competitors in the market, in the industry. When we consolidate them, we form work groups to discuss. And then at the central level, this is where we build this overarching branding for us to go out. So that at the same time, they are very well assured that we are not duplicating the work that they are trying to do, so they can continue to engage, but they can also write on to the larger brand of One Digital Government to also hunt. And in between, we will also refer. Sometimes it may not be the correct talent for the job in my agency, but it could be for yours. For example, this morning, I have handled another case that we do have this talent who wanted to go to another agency, but the agency was so selfless to say, actually, I can't keep the talent because the work is not what he is looking for, which is why we then help to handshake and we introduce to another agency. So this is one example that we have taken some time. It is going to take time again, right? For people to start to see eye to eye, to collaborate, and then go together. One last point I want to make. This is quite important, a principle that we undertake. The principle of if you want to run fast, you run alone. But if you want to run far, we walk together. So once we understand this principle, people will come together because we all want to run far. I hope I answer your question.
Thank you very much. Next question is about the wages and salaries. You said that the Singapore government is paying competitive salaries to tech talents, but having said that, we assume that there is still a salary wages gap between the public and private sectors. How are you compensating? Are you paying any allowances, for example?
Okay. Short answer is yes. For some critical roles and very hard to find talent, those very skilled talents, we do give some additional allowance, but with some condition behind that they have to fulfill the assessment that we have so that we know they're of certain standard. So that's a short answer. The long answer is there is actually a pay philosophy that help us, guide us, knowing how to compute all the different compensations salary range. The pay philosophy from our leaders is, first, we need to pay competitively, but we cannot overpay the market. So how do we know? So we need data. We work with private consulting firms to get hold of some of the salary benchmark data in the industry. We define for technology companies, for example. So we look at which are the technology companies that we actually hope to benchmark against. And that's where we understand the salary range. And then we do not overpay them. So we need to pay competitively to the average or slightly above average if we could. Then we sell the whole idea of the job, not based on salary, but based on the impact of the job that brings to the individual. So a quick example is whenever we go out, any advertisement that we make for jobs, any career fairs that we go, there is always this common message that we bring, which is tech for public good. The tech is not for salary. The tech is for public good. So if you have the power of tech, focus on what makes you satisfied, which is making a difference in people's life. And that is what public service is about. So people will feel that I joined the public service, I am paid average, maybe a little bit more to average of some industry, but of course, I do not have the very high pay as some of the big tech companies. But more importantly, what helped me to feel fulfilled in this ever-changing world is the impact, the meaning of the work that I do. So we need to be very careful, intentional in all our messages. You can go online to our social media and look at them. Very deliberate, very intentional to always focus on the impact. And this is something quite unique to public service that the industry sometimes have a challenge to sell.
So, well, because you said, is there any limit for those payments for the public servant? Is there any limit? And could you kind of elaborate the figure if possible? Could you tell us the actual payment price?
I don't have the actual numbers at hand, but when it comes to benchmarking, we will try to look at between 55 to 65 percentile. So example, when you look at the market, for example, a very big tech giant can be paying at a 95 percentile. So we can't do that because these are taxpayers' money. So we will adjust it to maybe 60 to 65 percentile. So it will be quite far away, not as competitive as compared to the tech companies. But that is something that at least we know that we have tried our best to benchmark. Yeah, I'm so sorry, I don't have the numbers at hand. But percentile, yes, we usually focus about between 55 to 65 percentile in between, depending on the job role. This is another important point because even you pay high, but you pay the same is an issue. It's a problem because some tech domain in the industry, they actually pays higher, some is lower. So it's very important to make sure that we don't go across too much a variation. Once you go too much a variation, it is very difficult to explain to the public officer why the range of different roles are so big.
Thank you very much. So next, we believe that there are a lot of tech talents, and you mentioned that you hire from the private sectors to the so-called mid-career hires. But we believe that the culture-wise, and there is significant differences between the public and the private sectors. Are you doing anything especially so that people coming from private sector can get used to the culture in the public services organization?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. Because culture building all focus on people. If there's no people, we don't even talk about culture. So there's definitely difference in culture. So there are 2 points I want to make. First, if we look at the existing public officers we have and having our own culture and the new hires from the industry, how do they actually blend in with one another? So that is one. Second is in the industry actually is also very diverse. Because if you look at multinational companies, they all have this issue of diversity, because people will need to get used to different culture as well. So coming back to the first point that I make, the current public officers that we have, when they blend in with the new hires from industry, we need to make sure that all these culture building do not just focus at the organization level. We target at the team level. So that is the strategy. At the team level, each team manager needs to understand diversity. Once they understand diversity, the rest is all about through the work that everyone does, they come together. We believe that people are still people, regardless whether you're in public service or you're in private sector. What is important is we give each other a chance, and we need to be very intentional, very deliberate at the team level, advocate them to do things together. And we always tell people that we can fail fast. Sometimes you can be too safe. It's okay to fail, but we have to fail fast. So this is becoming a common language that we need to be agile, we need to be bold, and we need to be collaborative. The last point I want to make is ABC, right? This agile, bold, and collaborative. This become our core principle in recruitment. When we recruit new hires from the industry, we need to make sure that we do 2 things. One, we tell them the ABC, agile, bold, and you have to be collaborative. Second thing, they need to know that there is no superhero in a team. If they come from the mindset that they are superhero, they bring something so different, I think we shouldn't hire them. So we need to be careful of recruitment as well. At the same time, we want to attract. It cannot be the case that we just want to attract, we bring them in, but we brought the wrong ones. And if I can just quickly add, come to my mind, a very important strategy to make this happen is always focus on public good. When you do recruitment, if the person has the heart for the public, the heart is at the right place. This is why the current public officers are still with us. So once they have this common understanding, common language, leave it to them. They will organically grow together.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. So, well, because in Singapore, the smart nations have been promoted with the collaboration between public and private sector. However, in order to nurture the tech talent, do you have any example in order to develop those tech talents with the collaboration with the private sector?
Okay, so the Singapore government does two things. One is, how do we help the private companies to even level up their tech talent? So this is one. Second thing is, within the government, how do we level up our own public officers in tech? So these are two different. So the first one that I talk about, how the government actually helps to level up companies. There are some programs from the other government agency. There are some government agencies that does this actually. So what they do is they work directly with the private companies to look at how do we help them to grow in Singapore, the tech leadership. Because the more they grow in Singapore, the longer they will stay in Singapore, the more they will invest in Singapore. So we need to also help them to grow. So there are some programs to help them build leadership, So those are one bucket of initiatives that the public service is also working with the private sector to level up the private sector. So that's one. Second is, how do we level up the current workforce, the public officers that we have? That's one thing. This is called competency framework. So that we need a common language for all public officers to understand, where am I? Where do I go to? If we leave it to every individual to interpret, it can be quite chaotic, can be quite confusing. So we spend at least 3 years from now to build a very robust competency framework. So the competency framework is similar to what I presented just now, but let me just explain a little bit more details on this. Competency framework needs to be created based on job role or profession. And each profession competency framework needs to have two things. One is the level of that profession. That means which job level. Is it an assistant manager? Is a manager? Is a senior manager? And so forth, different levels. Second thing is all the levels needs to have some common competency areas. The competency areas must be something that is cutting across all the different levels within the same profession. With these two in line, right, you will realize that people are very clear when it comes to career conversation. When the team manager talk to their staff member, they can say, okay, based on our assessment and based on what you go through, you are at assistant manager level 1 for maybe recruitment operations. So how do you level up? Then the team manager needs to explain and say, okay, if you want to go to level 2, you have to display some of the competencies. So behind the competency framework, there are some descriptors. We will say level 2 means you can exhibit certain behavior, you can create a process by your own, you don't need guidance, and so forth. So this is where the team manager has those information to coach the team itself, the team members, to say, hey, from level 1 going to level 2 for recruitment operations, I hope to see that you can do this, you can do that. So it becomes very factual for everyone to understand. The common language is competency framework. So this is how within the public service, after a couple of years, we have tried to build and make sure that it's more structured. This is where we are now.
Thank you very much. So in one of your slides, you talked about the number, quantity, skill, and the quality, the 3 types of the challenges that you are facing to secure digital talent. So what kind of data are you utilizing to perform analysis into these? Please elaborate.
Okay, so there are a couple of things. First of all, we can only say there's a shortage when we know how much we need. So we need to know how much we need first. So internally, we need to do workforce management to understand in maybe 3 years' time, 5 years' time, what kind of leaders we need, what are some of the technical domain we require, how big the workforce can grow. It can't be super accurate, I know, but at least we need some projection. So that's the first. Second, we need to make sure that because we know these are the domains, what we need, do we have people out there, right? Do we have people in the industry? So this is where, for our end, right, we utilize the LinkedIn platforms. So LinkedIn, we use LinkedIn Recruiter. We also use LinkedIn Insights platform. So this help us do this thing called talent mapping. When we do talent mapping, we need to understand where they are, skill sets, what they are trained for, based on their experience and background. So that is a data point that we use. Another point that we use is based on all the consulting surveys data that we benchmark also. Sometimes it's also good to look at some broad reports that some of the consulting firms has already helped us figure out. When we pull all these things together, the last thing we do is, where do we begin? What is the milestone? It is impossible for us to say that now we need maybe 100. I can definitely hire 100 tomorrow. It doesn't happen that way. So we need to prioritize. Some of the roles are more difficult to attract because they are more high paying that we can't afford. There could be other roles that are quite immediate that we can fill. So we need to create a milestone, maybe by every quarter or every half a year. We need to project how do we get hold of this tech talent and what is the approaches in between. So we do it in a very process and a very data-driven approach, put it this way. If not, we ourselves are not confident, first of all, to say that we have a shortage. We say that we have shortage because we have already analyzed that it is indeed a shortage based on our projection.
Thank you very much. So next, so during your presentation, you mentioned about the branding of the public servant. Well, because could you explain what kind of measures you take in order to have a branding of the public servant?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. This is again another topic this morning I discussed with my team when it comes to employer branding. So if I can share this idea, this philosophy, something that me and some of the leaders in public service we talk about. We need to know that employer branding, it is not just social media posts. Because once we have social media posts going out to the public, it looks nice, they are very shiny, but they may not be telling the actual day and life of everyone in public service. So what we hope to do is to make sure that our own people, our own public officers, they brand themselves. So how do we do it? First, for onboarding, when it comes to orientation, when we hire new people, new public officers in, the first day, the first thing we tell them is, please have a LinkedIn profile. And we even have a guide to tell them, if you want to know how to write a good LinkedIn profile, this is how you do it. Second, we ask them proactively, feel free to share your experience. You and your team, you can be going for lunch together. You can be working very hard on a project. You can celebrate success, post it. This helps you and help public service. So this is one example that we start from day one when public officers got hired into the government. Second is, whenever we have some good achievement, we always celebrate. When people look at happiness, good things happening, right, they wouldn't mind be part of it. So we celebrate success, like recently we have the Chinese New Year, so we have Chinese New Year celebration. So myself, I posted something. After that, I realized that there are like 8,000 people in a public service looking at it, and some of them they repost. So by going through individual to celebrate and share our experience online, collectively, that is a very strong employer branding. This is much better than just focusing on posting all the social media posts, TikTok videos, and so forth. Those are still important. Don't get me wrong, those are still important. But we should not put 100% of our focus on that. That is just something that we need to maintain, because if we don't do that, we may be maybe setting ourselves a few years back because other industry and companies are doing so. So we need to continue that. But the main focus is slowly build up the momentum that people get together online, they share their experience. What we figured is LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all these are very good platforms.
Thank you. And you talked about rehiring as a former public officer who went once to private sector to bring back to public sector. Do you have any network of such alumni or former public officers to attract those people?
We have. So I'll give you one quick example and one thing that we are going to do next month in February. So one quick example is about 3 months ago, I had a chat with one of our public officer who said that he's resigning, so he's leaving. So I chat with him and say, look, I think you want some experience in the private sector, go ahead, no problem, but let's keep in touch. 1 month later, he called me and said, Desmond, I don't think the work that I choose in the private sector suits me. I still pretty much like the work that I do previously. So ask me what's my advice, what can he do? So I connected him back with our HR business partner and explored something for him. And he came back. So I met him last week in office. So this is one example. We must always leave our door open, but don't be afraid that people will leave us. The more that we are not afraid, the more that we are open, the more likely they will come back because they know that we are people of very open mind, very big heart, public service. So let them feel what is public service through all this engagement. We don't just provide public service for our citizens. We should also provide public service for our colleagues. Make sure that they feel it, that they feel the heart in you. That's one. What we're going to do next month, we have this platform called the Alumni Network. So each of the agency, they have their own ways of doing alumni network. So what this means is we keep in touch. We have a mailing list of people who left us. And then we ask them, do you still want to get in touch with us? If yes, we invite you for lunch. We invite you with some of our latest updates. Sometimes our leaders may give some updates, town hall, to talk about what's next in the organization. And these people who left us knew about the history of where we are. So they are also curious, okay, if I have time, I will come and want to listen how you have grown. And we use that platform to re-engage them, to talk to them. How are you in the industry? Have you thought about coming back? If you want to come back, we can explore again. So again, be very open and have the public service to them. That will help.
Thank you very much. So we have received so many questions. However, we are running out of time. Therefore, we are going to conclude Q&A session. In closing, I would like to invite Mr. Teo to give us a message. Mr. Teo, please.
Thank you very much. Again, I want to say I'm very grateful for this opportunity for myself to share how the Singapore government has done what we could to attract, to develop and retain talent. It is still work in progress, because we are always on our toes trying to figure out what is a better way. But there's something that we always are very proud of. We always don't lose sight. And I think this will be quite applicable to Japan, what you're going through. I've been saying this throughout my answers just now also, public service. So if we really are trying to attract, develop, and retain, why will people stay with us? Public service. And how do we make sure that public service is amplified for them to feel it? It starts from us. When we do our recruitment, when we talk to potential talent, we always let them know the impact. When people feel for the impact, they will want to be with us. So this is very crucial. And we use this mindset to look at our policies for citizens and for staff. We look at how do we even come up with competency framework, whether is it easy for people to go through, or is it just too tough? We need to carry all this in mind so that the heart is there, people feel it, and people will connect. So this is the last part of things that I want to share. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So thank you very much for your valuable presentation. And through the presentation, we are able to learn about the various aspects, such as finding talent at an early stage, presenting a career path, and fostering a work environment. And we are able to understand the measures in Singapore's government. I believe we are able to gain a great deal of insight for Japan. With this, we would like to conclude today's lecture. The National Personnel Authority is planning to hold another lecture similar to this one on theme of digitalization and human resource management. For the next session, we plan to invite a speaker from the Dutch government, and we will inform all the participants of this meeting through email. We hope that you will join us again next time. Lastly, we would like to ask you to give us your feedback. If you are watching through the Zoom, there is a link for the feedback. And if you are watching through the website, there are questionnaires from the link. So thank you very much, and see you all again at the next lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you.